All right, good morning. So I'm Jussi, I'm from DNA, and DNA is one of the largest teleoperators in Finland and part of Telenor Group, which is one of the largest teleoperator in the world with 175 million customers around the world. Today I will talk about 4 topics. So I will start with the importance of digitalization and automation. I will also, in that session, I will tell a personal story which I haven't told publicly before. It's gonna be a bit emotional potentially for me, but let's see how it goes. The second thing I will talk about how technology should empower people. The third area is kind of how the work will change and what skills are needed in the future. Then I will talk a bit about the ethical use of technology and data, and finally what digital equality means. Let me start by thanking Niilo for the great opening for the event, and I fully agree that the employees should be the new customers. I believe that business as such is fairly simple. In business there are 5 key metrics. It starts with happy and motivated employees. When you get it right, the next thing is you will get satisfied customers because the employees will ensure it. When you have satisfied customers, then you will be able to get sales. When you get sales, you're able to get revenues, and when you get revenues, you're able to make profits. So from that point of view, it's fairly simple, but it all starts with employees. I fully agree with Niilo on that. So, what is the importance of digitalization and automation? If we think about COVID-19 situation and what happened, everybody went to work remotely. It happened practically overnight. What if that would have happened 5 or 10 years ago, when we didn't have those cloud-based communication solutions and we didn't have current network capabilities? I would argue that actually the whole society would have stopped. So the importance of cloud and the importance of networks and the importance of technology is even more important than ever. The second point is that I believe, honestly, that technology can solve the world's most pressing problems when it comes to the environmental challenge that we have at hand, when it comes to the economical challenges, when it comes about curing cancer and so on. Technology can help us big time with these problems. Then I will open my personal experience about technology. This is the picture of me and my son 20 years ago. He was born in Espoo, and everything went well for the first 3 days. When we were going, leaving the hospital, there's always doctor's inspection on the baby. At that point, they found out that the baby had a heart condition and needed to be operated as soon as possible. So they moved him to the intensive care unit, and then he was operated. In the operation, unfortunately, the heart stopped. They were able to start the heart again, and he was for a couple of weeks in the intensive care unit. Ultimately, he got pneumonia, and he died at the age of 2 weeks. In the current world, AI can predict the pneumonia in forehand. So in the current world, this kind of situation most probably would not happen. So when it comes to the importance of technology, I personally feel that the technology can empower people to achieve more. Technology as such is not good or bad. It completely depends on how we use it. So let's make it work for people's benefit. I think that's the key for the discussion today. And as Niilo well started in the discussion, so that's the kind of ultimate goal of technology. So, when technology should empower people, what does it mean? Technology has seen as a kind of rainmaker in many areas, and very often we think that technology is something that is developed for technology's sake. I completely disagree. It needs to be developed for the humans. It needs to be developed for our own benefit. At the same time, we think about technology as it's been there forever. So if you think about social media was started with Facebook. And the reality is that Facebook, Roger Federer just ended his career in Laver Cup in tennis. Roger Federer became world #1 in tennis 2 weeks before Facebook was formed. So it's really, really new when you think about the kind of technological shifts. Very often we underestimate or overestimate the impact of technology short term, but underestimate the impact of the technology longer term. And then if we think about artificial intelligence, if we think about quantum computing, mixed reality, it will take a bit of time, especially with quantum computing and partially with mixed reality as well, but it will completely change the way we work. At the same time, I think we should call artificial intelligence as empowering intelligence. I think that would tell a lot more than it's something that is kind of developed itself and is kind of technologically very advanced. So I think it should always empower people. At the same time, I believe that when we are able to combine human capabilities with AI capabilities, that will deliver the best possible outcome. So let's take an example. I would go to see a doctor saying that kind of, I have some issues with my heart. I have a smartwatch, I have Oura Ring, which is kind of recording everything more or less in what's going on in the body and heart and so on. So basically with that, the smartwatch and the AI would easily say that, okay, it seems that there is some issues in the heart, so this medicine could work. But at the same time, experienced doctor might look at the data and see that actually, hey, Jussi has been working way too much. He's close to burnout, so he will need to rest instead of taking any medicine. So this is kind of, and just the same if you think about kind of prediction of cancer, AI can see the cancer cells from the pictures a lot better than humans. But at the same time, ultimately, when you combine the AI capabilities with human capabilities, you will get the best possible outcomes. So the work will change completely. And what skills do we need in the future? So I would argue that the work will be, or the careers will be substantially shorter. So Lauri Järvilehto from Aalto University has created a model called WAVE model, which is proposing that the careers will be in a way that instead of going to the university, the youngsters might be kind of going to Stanford or MIT or something and do micro degrees. And actually following getting the micro degree, they will go to work. They will work, learn during their work, and they will kind of go to different courses and so on. But that job might last for around 10 years. Then they will go back to school, learn another occupation, and then go back to work. So the kind of rhythm of careers and rhythm of change will just accelerate as we move forward. And also, if you think about, I don't know how many of you have read Carol Dweck's book called Mindset. Carol is a Stanford University professor, and it's a very, very good book. So basically, it proposes that if you have a fixed mindset, you think that your intelligence, your talent, your capabilities are fixed. So you cannot change them over time. And if you have growth mindset, you believe that the talent, intelligence, and so on is something you're able to develop with effort. And I think that will be the key for the future. So we will need to have the effort to constantly develop our capabilities, constantly get better. Next, I would argue that AI will replace every single role that can be modeled. So Niilo was saying that 30% of the roles can be, all the tasks can be replaced with automation. Going forward, I would argue that every single role that can be modeled, AI will replace. The question is when. And that will fundamentally change the way we work. And if I think about the skills that I think we should be teaching for our children, I would argue that we've been kind of thought in a way that try to learn and memorize everything and kind of work on the IQ part. But at the same time, the mobile phones that we have in our pockets have a lot more information as we have. Of course, there is false information, but most probably there's a lot of false information in my head as well. So from that point of view, it doesn't really change. You just need to be critical on the data. But going forward, if AI will replace every role that can be modeled, I would argue that the kids should learn emotional intelligence, empathy, social skills, complex problem solving, and potentially arts. So something that hasn't been valued that much in the modern society when it's all about kind of IQ and being fast. But I would argue that 50 years from now, the situation, or even 30 years from now, the situation might be completely different. Then if you think about kind of when you want to hire people and motivate people, coming back to Niilo's opening about kind of make employees your new customers, I would argue that first of all, you need to have purpose. People need to have purpose why they are working. Then you need to make it the best place to work, best place kind of for everybody to be them true selves. At DNA, we just launched new employer promise and employer vision, which is DNA will be human and one of a kind place to work. So everybody can be their true selves. We are family centric. We will give freedom for the employees, so give kind of trust, freedom, but also accountability. So they need to be, everybody needs to be kind of accountable for the results ultimately. Then also diversity and equal opportunities, I think, is critical. And it's easy to get diversity into the organization. Just hire kind of people with different backgrounds and so on. But how do you make every voice equal in the organization is a lot more tricky thing to do. And even if you think about Teams meeting, when some of the team is in the office, in the meeting room, and some are online, is every voice equal even in that situation? Most probably not. So those are the things we need to consider constantly in order to be the best place to work. And then also on the learning and development, I believe that we as leaders, we should be the role models. And also I think we should have reverse mentoring from the youngsters, because they are in many ways a lot better and far more advanced than we are. So that's also something to think, but we kind of have the humility in learning and kind of do not try to be the smartest person in the room, rather be a kind of humble and learn every day new things. Then, if you think about the ethical use of technology and data, as Niilo said, the world is changing. We have war ongoing in Europe. We had just the COVID-19. A lot of new stuff coming all the time. Security will be critical. So how do we make sure that kind of we keep ourselves, our organizations, and so on safe? But I think the ethical use of technology and data will be critical when we go forward. Niilo kind of showed the numbers about the market cap of different companies and the big cloud players. And now if you think about where the kind of power is from the tech development point of view, it's in the US, which is kind of a capital world. You can do whatever you like with the tech more or less and the data. Then if you think about China, which is the other development center, then it's all about kind of getting control of the citizens, which is a different approach. And Europe is lacking behind. So the question is, how do we make sure that Europe will be the role model in ethical use of data and technology? We've done it now with GDPR, which was super good. And but I think we need to do it with AI as well. So I would argue that artificial intelligence needs regulation, but the regulation needs to be built in a way that it's simple, it's equal, and it doesn't prevent EU's competitiveness. My point of view is that it should be very simple. There should be always one person who is responsible for the outcome of the algorithm. Always be one person who is responsible for the outcome of the algorithm. When we can get there, somebody needs to make sure that the data sets are not biased. Somebody needs to understand well enough what the algorithms are doing, how the algorithms are developing themselves going forward. So I think that will be critical for the future, but at the same time, my concern is that the AI regulation becomes too big and too complex, and then it slows Europe down. Then if you think about different kind of services, we've thought in a way that digital services are free. Those are easy to use and those are free. But what you need to understand is that if some service is free, then you are part of the product. It's actually your data, it's your information that the provider is selling. And that's always something you need to bear in mind when utilizing different solutions. Then, digital equality. How do we make sure that every person in Finland, but every person in the world, will have similar capabilities and similar access to technology? They need to have devices, they need to have networks, they need to have the applications. So how do we make it happen? And also especially for senior citizens, how do we make sure that they have the skills? So then the question comes back to the tech providers. How do we make sure that our services are built in the way that the products are understandable, the products are easy to use, and everybody can have them? This was the case, for example, if you think about the COVID-19 situation. The kids went to remote schooling. At that point, I was working at Microsoft, and I started hearing worries from the teachers that actually the kids don't have laptops. And if there are kind of four kids in the family, there might be 1 or 2 laptops in the family. And in that case, it's very kind of unequal the way that the kids are able to learn in those kind of situations. So in that situation, there was kind of good program where we were able to take apart to kind of get a few thousand pieces for the children as charity in Finland. But those are the things we need to consider constantly. Also, there is a lot of used phones. There's a lot of used laptops in the society. How do we make sure that actually we are able to give those for the kids and the families and people who need those in order to have equal access to technology? So, it's our job, it's our responsibility to make sure that we use the technology for good and ensure that everybody can be part of that change. So with that, big thank you, and over to Reidar.
So Jussi, how optimistic or pessimistic are you personally on what's going on to happen in the next few years? How would you characterize your optimism or pessimism?
I'm always optimist.
You're always optimist?
I'm always optimist because I believe that, as said, technology as such is not good or bad. It's our job to make it work for good. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm optimistic that people ultimately want to be good.
So one of the challenges we have really seen during the past few years with the pandemic is, of course, that it's quite hard for people to change. I mean, we have these patterns, these habits. You move in a certain way, you dress in a certain way, you speak with a certain accent, you eat certain foods. And sometimes people do like this, and then they still want to shake hands even after these past 2 years. Yeah. So do we need, above all, technological solutions to make sure that change happens, or do you really think people can drive the change with their personal changes?
I think people will need to drive the change. Technology will support us there, but it all starts with people.
Right. So when you look at the world map, where do you see, besides Finland is the happiest country in the world, Niilo mentioned the word happiness and said that when people are happy, then of course that is very good for business. So that's a very nice tie-in with what we're discussing here. Do you think that we in Finland have a reason to be particularly proud right now here? We have a huge European audience. Or are we actually, should we be looking for some other countries, or what are your feelings about that?
I think we can be proud. We can be optimists. Finland is very advanced when it comes to technology. We are able to kind of, following the DESI research, Finland is the kind of most advanced digital economy in the world, even though we are a super small country in the world scale. I believe that we can be the role models in, for example, in the ethical use of AI. We won't be the ones developing the AI, but we can.
Oh, we won't.
We won't, because ultimately the AI is developed by the big corporations in the US and in China currently. So it kind of bridging that gap in Finland is not realistic. But at the same time, our job, I think, we should be to be the role model. How do we use technology for good? How do we use technology in an ethical way? And also, how do we push those into EU and the way Europe works? Because, for example, if we take GDPR as an example, GDPR, in a way, it was painful when it came for many businesses, but there's very, very good background for the legislation. And the big international corporations like Microsoft and others changed their kind of ways of working to support GDPR and be GDPR compliant, and then they actually copied the same models to all the other regions in the world. So once again, Europe was kind of showing the way, and then others are utilizing the same practices, which are beneficial for the consumers and beneficial for the people.
So when we talk about happiness, that has to do with psychology. Right now at Aalto University, they have this very autumn a new program called Technological Psychology. Not just teknillinen fysiikka, etc., but teknillinen psykologia. Yeah. And computer psychology is one of the new disciplines emerging as well, whereby we talk about how we should be developing ourselves as human beings to ensure that we are compatible with computers, mainly regarding our attitudes and skills, of course, so that we can interact with the computers. Yeah. But at the same time, the computers need to learn to take us into consideration. So does Finland have a lot to give, or what parts of the world are you looking for when we look at things, not just purely technological AI solutions, but philosophy and psychology?
I think there are a lot of opportunities, but I wouldn't think that we need to make humans to work for technology. I think it should be vice versa. And the tech is moving and becoming more and more consumer-friendly and people-friendly constantly. If you think about these kind of low-code, no-code solutions, for example, for developing software, in that case, if you're able to create PowerPoint presentation, you're able to develop your own application.
Right.
So tech will help us in many ways, also to kind of help us achieve a lot more. Even when we don't have the coding capabilities. So the tech should adapt to human needs, not the vice versa.
So will computers and humans collaborate, though, maybe even in symbiosis, or will they always be our tools or slaves?
I think technology should always be kind of controlled by people. So I'm not kind of, if you think about what Harari, for example, is saying in his books, I don't fully buy it.
Well, computers want to do more and more. My laptop has this Microsoft product, and it wants to do all kinds of stuff while I'm writing or speaking to it. And this is increasing. So when you say it should be controlled, don't you think AI will have a will of its own or do stuff of their own?
Well, AI as such, if you think about it, it's kind of it's data and it's algorithms. So yes, it can develop kind of human type of capabilities, and it can read the kind of facial impressions and so on really well already now. So it will be humankind in a way, but still I think we should be the ones saying what's okay for technology to do and what's not okay.
Still, of course, there are some adjustments we need to make. So rounding off, what kind of thoughts would you like to tell our audience? What kind of, maybe frankly and bluntly, because we're Finns, so we speak straightly, what kind of changes in habits or attitudes even do you suggest people make sure they have in the next few years to make sure that they remain relevant in the workplace and cope with all the changes in technology?
Yeah, I would go back to the what I was arguing previously around kind of you need to kind of improve your skills in the kind of emotional and social skills and complex problem solving and so on, rather maybe than on the kind of IQ side and kind of getting to know stuff. At the same time, I believe that the growth mindset and being able to learn every day in a humble way will be the key, because the world will change more rapidly than ever. So the pace will just kind of accelerate. So then the question is that if we are able to, all of us, all the Finns and all the kind of citizens in the world are able to develop their capabilities constantly, then everybody will be relevant and everybody will be able to contribute for the society. But if you just think that, okay, what I know today is sufficient and that's enough, then the kind of it will be tough for you for the future.
So my last question here for you is regarding Europe versus the rest of the world. We don't want to build any kind of a competition necessarily, but Europe in itself is big, and we have many cultures, we have many languages. So to what extent will that be useful or good for us compared to maybe more monolithic countries and cultures?
Well, I think democracy is actually the big asset for us. So democracy should always be kind of secured. And at the same time, we need to recognize that the kind of way Chinese are working is for example, very different, or how Russians are working.
Strongly top-down.
Yeah. So that's something we need to recognize and face the reality. But at the same time, I think the power of Europe is actually in democracy and the kind of being the kind of people-centric and human-centric, and everybody can be their true self. So I believe that it's a huge asset for all of us.
Sure. At the same time, as we have seen very concretely here and in other countries, it's our Achilles heel. Yeah. Because then people really need to understand and be educated, understand what they are voting about in order to make excellent choices about their leaders.
Yes.
So we'll leave it at that. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much for being. We really appreciated. Jussi is well known, as we noted, and as you could see from your presentation, as truly being people and human-centric, not just about driving technology and profits, but clearly technology and business is for people, not the other way around.